You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm here today with Ben Plomion, who is at Dibbs. And Dibbs is playing in a bunch of different spaces with regards to collectibles. But Ben, why don't you start with giving us what the origin story was for Dibbs and what exactly you do and how you've evolved?
Of course. Thank you so much, Kevin, for having me on this podcast. I've been watching and listening to a couple of previous podcasts, and super happy to be with you today and speak about NFTs and marketing. So Dibbs was founded in 2020 by Evan Vandenberg, who's the co-founder, CEO, and happens to be my boss as well. And is a passionate sports fan and lifelong collector of sports memorabilia. And he uses blockchain experience to build a NFT-backed organization. Precisely 1 year ago yesterday, Dibbs released its iOS. And, in other words, Dibbs turned 1 year old yesterday. So happy birthday to us. Today, Dibbs is more than just a sports marketplace. We want to ensure that the world's most valuable physical collectibles can maintain relevance and gain utility in the digital world. To put it very simply, what we do as a company is we store physical collectibles in a highly secure vault. We create digital twins, and we make those freshly minted NFTs or non-fungible tokens available on Dibbs Marketplace and others as well. There are three types of questions we get usually from investors, marketers, and users. The first one is, what type of assets do we collect and do we trade and sell? I don't know if you know this, Kevin, but the collectible market is humongous. It's about $370 billion globally. Dibbs started with sports rookie cards. We expanded into Pokemon cards and comic books. And we're now working with a couple of partners in the sports, media, and also music industries. So more to come. Keep an eye on this space. We also get questions about the technology. Everything that we do is blockchain-enabled, real-time marketplace. And then we always get questions about, why should we trust Dibbs, early-stage startup here based in LA, because we have expertise in the blockchain, and Web3 environments. We're building foundational pipes to be trusted by institutions, brands, financial firms, regulators, and we're also backed by Amazon, Courtside Ventures, Trust Ventures, and a number of athletes, some of them you may have heard of. Chris Paul, Kevin Love are investors at Dibbs as well. So very happy to be here, tell the Dibbs story, and talk about two of my passion points, NFTs and marketing.
That's great. An additional question popped into my head as you went through the business model. For a lot of these assets, is having a secure climate-controlled environment particularly important in preserving the value of the asset?
Absolutely. Our vault is highly secure, 24/7, has a number of mechanisms to make sure that whatever is being stored, whether this is a sport rookie card or comic book or anything else, is highly protected. It's kind of funny because I haven't been to the vault yet, but my colleagues have been, and there is nothing like, if a fire breaks out, you're not going to use water to stop the fire. So there's also like mechanisms to make sure that whatever is being stored is highly protected and the value we retain in the vault.
Right, that's fascinating. So there seems to be like a big overlap where sort of people consider collectibles and artwork somewhat similar in the way they're traded and in the way they're valued, and that sort of element of scarcity with regards to people owning something special. How would you contrast the art market from the collectibles market? Are they really pretty much the same, or are they quite different?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And I think there are some similarities and there are some very stark differences too. In terms of similarities, both the art market and the collectible market, appeals to a subset of consumers. In the arts world, for example, some consumers may have a preference for Banksy over, let's say, Miro. In the collectible world, you see something similar. Some consumers may have a preference for Marvel and may not be as much into Pokemon cards, right? So consumer preferences, as well as the general availability of an art piece or collectible, create interesting value for each item. Those are the similarities. In terms of differences, one major one is it's about how you think about art and collectible in the context of communities. For collectors, it's more than having a great piece of art in your lobby, for example. It's not much about what you collect, it's how you're collecting it. There's a sentiment that if you like, let's say, Pokemon cards, you belong to the community of Pokemon cards holders, right? So that's the difference between collecting items and really having different pieces of art in your home. To some degree, collecting is the fun part of collectibles because you can connect to people who have similar interests. The other difference is how those items are being displayed. In many cases, much of the art world is being stored in a gallery or museum or a vault. You can travel, you can sit, but you're not really hunting for it. In the world of collectible, it is very different. There's a thrill that comes with the chase of finding the mint condition of this Batman comic book #2. And that makes you feel part of something much, much larger, right? We've been talking to a lot of partners over the last couple of days, and we still talk about, real estate, estate sale. You still think about there's going to be estate state, and all of us are like very intrigued. Should I go and check out if maybe I can find this comic book or something that I've been looking for? More like a treasure hunt in some ways, which is very different from collecting arts, which is a bit more, institutionalized than collectibles.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of my nonprofit clients is Goodwill of New York and New Jersey, which is I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Goodwill stores, but people donate their stuff, mostly clothing, but other stuff as well, sometimes furniture, into Goodwill, and of course it gets resold. And there's an entire tribe or ecosystem of passionate thrift store shoppers, which are not the low-income people sort of for whom the primary focus is for Goodwill, but these are the ones who are looking for those hidden bargains, right? Those things where it's a piece of china or it's a piece of furniture or artwork or even clothing that's super rare. And so it's the hunt, right? For those people, it is part of the hunt. So it's interesting because I didn't really know that much about that subsegment of the Goodwill store shopper until we had them as a client. And so it's sort of fascinating that two diverse groups at opposite ends of the socioeconomic spectrum actually both enjoy shopping at Goodwill stores. And that's, I think, part of the same thing with estate sales, right? Some people think of estate sales like a garage sale where you pick up a used lawnmower for $25. And other people are there looking for, a Batman comic book.
It's amazing what a good old, chase of finding the perfect item can do for people. Going to a Goodwill store, going to an estate sale, or quite frankly, going to, a number of markets, flea markets, where you can find stuff that you think has a lot of value, and you think that may not be appreciated for the value that it has today by the current owner. Absolutely.
So brands are sort of struggling with NFTs at the moment. They're sort of trying to decide where NFTs belong in their marketing plan, or if NFTs belong in their marketing plan. So what should brands understand about NFTs and digital collectibles that you don't think that they understand fully yet?
Yeah, so those two passions of mine are now emerging, and I'm excited to be talking about those things. We're pretty bullish at Dibbs on the opportunity that brands have to reach and connect with their digital-first consumers through NFTs. I think that overall, if you put just the artistic side of NFTs aside for a second and look at the utility that NFT can provide to you, let's say access to a community or access to merchandising, I think there's a lot of opportunities for progressive marketers, because progressive marketers can use NFTs in particular to create hyper engagement with their users, and NFT are the perfect vehicle for that. And I'd like to give you an example. I've been a good fan of this brand Adidas for a long time, maybe 30 or 35 years. And, haven't really engaged with the brand since I've been a teenager, quite frankly. But, my first NFT that I purchased about 2 months ago was sort of like Adidas into the metaverse NFT featuring a character called Indigo Hertz. And, it's visually very appealing, but the reason why I got the NFT is to give me access to a Discord community of Adidas, people probably the same age as I am, and also give me access to special merchandises. I'm expecting a box to come through in the next few days that's going to be very custom Adidas attire that frankly is not available through a Goodwill or any Adidas stores right now. So this idea of access utility beyond NFT is what is really compelling for a brand to go and connect with the users. I also think that developing an NFT strategy is simpler than what it may look like. There are definitely some low-hanging fruits for brands who are looking for assistance in figuring out their Web3 strategy. Our advice here at Dibbs is to look at your physical collectibles, whether you're an athlete, whether you are a musician, whether you're a brand, and look at what's available right now and turn those physical collectible into an asset, basically an NFT for users to engage with. So I give you an example. If you are, let's say, DC Comics, it may make sense to start with those very precious, rare Batman figurines or little figures, I think, as they say in the UK, into NFT, because you could use those NFTs to give your fans or users access to movie premieres, for example, right? This is a very good example of utility that a brand could make available almost overnight without overthinking it. So we think NFT is a very good step to get into the metaverse. It's almost like NFTs are becoming a gateway to Web 3.0. We're also seeing that the same progressive marketers who have embraced NFTs and have found some very good utility have been the best one positioned in the context of the metaverse. Think about Gucci, for example, a mega brand. They have managed to sell a $3,000 Gucci bag in Roblox, a price that is higher than the cost of the exact same bag in real life. So that really shows how brands have embraced both the metaverse and NFTs to really connect in a meaningful way with the user base over time. And we think that trend is just going to accelerate over the next few years.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think, what I find most interesting about your business is that you live at the intersection between the physical item and where the NFT represents the physical item. Given that, do you see some of the brands that release sort of serialized, very limited run items also releasing the serialized NFTs along with those, so that, if it's the 25th pair out of 100 of these sneakers that are being produced, that the ownership can sort of transfer in a documentable way, via an NFT in a secondary market, along with the physical item itself moving together with the NFT?
That's exactly right. The way you describe it is exactly what we do. We take those physical collectibles, whether this is a sports rookie car, a guitar, comic books, and turn them into an NFT that can be traded, sold, and bought, on a marketplace. We're almost bringing a second life to those physical collectibles. It's almost, another way to push this, it's almost like old meets new again, right? But we really are on a mission to bring those highly valuable collectibles back to life again in a digital form and providing utility to the users and the partners that we have.
Yeah. The interesting, it goes outside of your vault-based methodology, as I was sort of thinking about, person might still want to keep the physical collectible sneaker in their house, right? Because it's bragging rights when people come to visit them, and they've got, that signed football helmet, or those sneakers, or that trading card is at their home. Do you see yourselves also extending into where you don't necessarily have the physical item, but you still have provide the NFT chain for those items?
Of course. Today, the most common use case at Dibbs is for us to secure, let's say, a highly valuable rookie sports car. Let's say it's worth $10,000, right? And the athlete wants to make sure that they can touch as many users or fans as they like. So instead of making that sports collectible available only to one wealthy collector, why not storing that sports rookie car into a vote and then offer a fraction of the sports rookie car in the digital format? Putting another way, now, instead of selling a $10,000 sports rookie car to one person, maybe you can sell the car to, let's say, 100 fans. So that provides an enormous amount of value, especially if you can sell this on a fractional basis. But you're right, you can buy it on a fractional basis, or you may want to buy the entire thing, in which case the entire thing will be sitting in your house as opposed to be sitting in our vote, for example. I think another very good use case, which is one of my favorite ones, is think about, a lot of people like music. I'm sure that you do, Kevin, and I do as well. But let's say I'm going to make that up just for the fun of it. But let's say you're a fan of AC/DC, a lifetime fan, love them, been to a couple of concerts, and it's going to be hard for you to buy this $100,000 guitar from AC/DC. Not that you can't or don't want to, but what if instead we could get this AC/DC guitar, store it into the vote, turning it into NFTs, and allow multiple buyers to buy a piece of that guitar and have a digital collectible available, maybe on his phone, maybe on a digital screen in their houses. So the idea is we try to democratize as much as we can those very high value collectibles and touch as many users as we can.
Right. Well, that'll be interesting. Obviously, if you do start to move a little bit into the art world, right? The art world is also being fractionalized by a variety of players as well. So we'll have to see, how the Venn diagrams evolve for that. So you had mentioned that this sort of is, to some extent, could link together the metaverse with reality, but the metaverse and it's sort of going through a bit of a transformation at the moment. Obviously, Facebook renamed itself Meta, betting that the metaverse will be a success, but there have been failures in the metaverse before, most notably Second Life, which a bunch of people bet on, and then I don't think there's really anybody using it anymore, although I may be wrong. But it certainly didn't live up to the hype. So what makes this time different?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And it's funny because when I saw your question, as I was preparing for the interview, it put a smile on my face. I was actually one of the early Second Life adopters when I was back at General Electric in Connecticut. I was responsible to co-create a recruiting campus on Second Life. That way G could go and hire people outside the US, in a digital way. And, I think it was very early. That was 20 years ago almost. It was very early. And I think even though G had some success with Second Life, there are things that make me think that the metaverse can be a lot more successful moving forward, right? In some ways, I think the technology has changed a lot in the last 20 years. I remember being in Second Life with my little laptop trying to get in and trying to talk to candidates, in a platform. And it was not easy 20 years ago. We barely had 3G. We didn't have 4G or 5G. The hardware was what it was, and the software was not that strong. So that has changed completely in the last 20 years. Secondly, we do spend a lot more time online. If you look at the pandemic in particular and how it accelerated the time that we spend online, Roblox today, which is one of the leading metaverse platforms, a average user on Roblox spend 2.6 hours a day. 2.6 hours a day. Now, I don't know what it does for your mental health, but that's a whole different story. But, those platforms are very sticky as opposed to Second Life, which was, a different experience at the time. And then last but not least, I think when Second Life was there, it was Second Life. And there was really no ecosystem behind or around Second Life. But now if you look at the ecosystem of the metaverse, it's everything. It's NFTs, Dibbs, of course, and many others. It's gaming, it's crypto companies. There's an entire ecosystem of companies building either a metaverse with a lowercase m, which is think about it as a world metaverse. And there's the big metaverse with a big M, which is how to make sure that those things are interoperable and how to make sure that whatever Facebook is building with Meta, which is a $10 billion commitment on the side, is going to be somewhat interoperable with, let's say, Roblox or Minecraft or whatever. So a lot has changed in the last 20 years. Tech has evolved, but time spent has evolved. But last but not least, the ecosystem is very different. There's a very strong infrastructure behind the metaverse right now. And I believe the metaverse is here to stay. If you look at the investment made by Microsoft, Facebook, and many other platforms over the last year, those are very significant. The metaverse is here to stay.
Well, I certainly hope so in some form. So, when we're recording this, it's been a wild several months with regards to the cryptocurrencies, which of course, sit parallel because they're both blockchain enabled like NFTs are. But I think there's certainly a difference in philosophy behind people owning cryptocurrency assets and people owning NFTs. Do you feel like NFT holders are more of hodlers than cryptocurrency holders, or do you feel like they're more similar?
Yeah, so for marketers on the call here, the reference to the term HODL is a typo to that was first appear in famous Reddit thread on crypto. And the idea is it's a term that commonly used by the crypto community to describe how crypto holders can hang on to the assets and not sell them at a time of deteriorating market conditions. So to your point, Kevin, I think there are many types of NFT owners. First of all, NFTs are not as liquid as crypto, right? With crypto, you can go to Coinbase wallet and in 1.5 seconds, transfer a Bitcoin into a fiat currency and vice versa. With NFTs, you have to sell them. You have to put them on OpenSea and other places and find a buyer. And there's a couple of transactions being involved. But to me, there are different types of NFT owners. You've got the Ben type, which is me, right? I'm here for the long run. I bought my Adidas, into the metaverse NFT with no intention whatsoever of selling that thing ever. I'm emotionally attached. It gave me access to a community on Discord, special merchandising, and whatever the conditions are today, I've got no desire to sell this. I'm going to hold this for as much as I can. Other NFT owners are in it for the money, right? Because we live in a capitalistic world in some ways, and probably more likely to buy and sell depending on the market is doing. But right now, I would say, Kevin, is I was looking at the price of one Ethereum this morning, which is around $1,200. For reference, it was worth close to $5,000 in December 2021. So right now, for investors, it is probably a good time to buy NFTs at a lower price point than they were maybe just a few months ago. I'll give you another example. This morning only, I was taking a look at OpenSea, and a Bored Ape Kennel Club NFT, which was selling around $25,000 in December, is now selling for about $8,000. So I argue this is probably a good market to be buying right now if you're finding the right assets. But again, this is not an investment advice by any form or any means.
Yeah, it's funny. I had you mentioned that HODL was originally a typo. I had been told, and maybe I never looked at the original Reddit thread, but maybe afterwards it got renamed as an acronym for "Hold On for Dear Life," right? Because that's how it was explained to me when I first learned of the acronym, the HODL philosophy. So you mentioned Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? So should marketers partner with existing metaverse and NFT brands like Bored Ape, or should they go off on their own, do you think?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And, I have been fascinated by the marketing prowess of Bored Ape Yacht Club. I think that in terms of creativity in the world of NFTs and the metaverse, like they are really established a very high bar for themselves. If you're not familiar with Bored Ape Yacht Club, besides the aesthetics of NFT, when you acquire Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, you acquire the IPs of the NFT itself. So it means that you have the right to go use the look and feel of the NFT for a number of reasons, including marketing reasons. And what I'm really intrigued about, Kevin, is how some brands have figured out a way to turn those IPs into a compelling value proposition for the audiences. And I will give you one example of a small company, but I think it's still very interesting. So there was a group of entrepreneurs who are based here in Long Beach, California, not Long Beach, New York, Long Beach here in California. And what they've done is pretty smart. They've acquired one, if not two, I don't remember the exact number, Bored Ape Yacht Club. And it will give them access to the IP of the NFT itself. They use this NFT, they use the look and feel of the NFT to come up with a branded identity for an entire new company, a new burger chain called Bored and Hungry, right? So if you follow here, they basically out of the gate overnight launch a burger chain with branding that was inheriting from the NFT they acquired from Bored Ape Yacht Club. That accelerated brand recognition, hype, of course, and really it was a really, really interesting application of IP being acquired through a Bored Ape NFT. And this is just one of the many examples. There are, I think, 10,000 Bored Ape NFTs right now. Not every single owner or celebrity is going to go and turning into a branding exercise, but you can see the power of, let's say, a Nike or someone else acquiring that particular Bored Ape and turning into kind of a spin-off, a successful spin-off for marketing purposes.
Interesting. Yeah. So in the case of those entrepreneurs using Bored Ape as an IP launchpad for their burger brand, I guess that would be considered more of a branding play. I guess the other question relating to NFTs and sort of where marketers should put them within their budgets is, should they think about the metaverse in general as more suited to direct response marketing, or should they think about it as more as branding and awareness as they venture into the metaverse?
It's a good question. And I think about this question really hard, Kevin, because I know your background and I know many of your audience's background from a SCM and direct response standpoint. And I also come from that world. But I would say for now, the metaverse right now is mostly a brand focused play. I would argue that for the most part, the metaverse is a public relations type of exercise, be a way for brands to connect with the most active audiences where they are, and three, really a place where brands can experiment and innovate with different formats and different ideas. It is a matter of time before the metaverse becomes a direct response play, but I think it's going to take a few years to get there. Right now, I see the metaverse as a massive experiment for brands. And if you look at the brands being involved in the metaverse, for the most part, the brands who started that trend are luxury brands. And then they got followed by, the more mainstream brands like Lego and Vans and many others who are using metaverse, Roblox in particular, as really a sandbox to try different things and connect with different audiences. But I think, to your point, Kevin, it's a matter of time before the metaverse turns from a branding play into really a direct response play where actual revenue dollars can be generated from those brands in the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, the one perhaps exception that comes to mind for me now isn't so much where brands have come on board necessarily, but where brands have been created within the metaverse that are selling the virtual goods, right? So, my son will come to me and say, oh, he wants to buy a specific Minecraft cape off of the Hypixel store, right? And I'm like, but why do you want to spend $3 on something that doesn't exist? He's like, no, you don't understand. It does exist. It's rare. It makes me different. It's like his virtual fashion item for his for his character, right? And so, there's a lot of transaction volume within the metaverse for the brands that are already there, right? The question for me becomes, would he be interested in potentially buying a branded cape from Adidas, right? Or branded sneakers for his character, right? In the metaverse exclusively, if that were to exist. And so I think that's the area where it feels a little bit more like direct response, because somebody could see the offer for it, they could engage and decide to spend their virtual currency on that offer, and then be wearing a Bored Ape Yacht Club T-shirt in Minecraft, right?
Yeah, it's
Something
mind-blowing. There was a study conducted by, I think it was Roblox, like a month ago. They determined that 1 user out of 10 is changing her or his avatar on a daily basis. So your son is not the only one in trying to express himself, in the metaverse, by buying different skins and different accessories. And this is an enormous business. In fact, this is what is driving most of Roblox revenue today. So there's a lot of brands in that space. And I think it's just a matter of time before the very large brands, Target, for example, come in and have a physical presence with true e-commerce capabilities. But right now, you're right, digital self-expression in the metaverse is critical. It's probably more important to your son to have a great avatar in Roblox and Minecraft than having a great pair of Nike that you can wear to school. But that's a debate that you want to have with your son directly.
Well, clearly you're wearing your marketing hat much of your day. So I'm curious, what are you most excited about with regards to sort of digital communications platforms, new strategies or tactics that you think will be effective for the remainder of this year and into next year?
There are two things I'm starting to get obsessed about in the metaverse in particular. Two things that I think are relevant to any marketers, whether you're a brand marketer or direct response marketer. First of all, the first thing I'm seeing is I'm going into those metaverse platforms and I'm seeing, basically digital billboards similar to what we have on the web or what we have on the streets. And I think the sophistication of advertising in the metaverse, will probably, increase over time. So what I'd like to see in the next few years is, your son may be going into Roblox, for example, or let's say Decentraland. Your son going to Decentraland and seeing a billboard for, let's say, Toyota, right? What I would like to envision is your son, as he gets close to the ad for Toyota, the ad would turn into a Toyota car that he can take for a spin in the metaverse, right? So the idea of turning a digital billboard into a user experience, to me, is fascinating. There's a lot of questions that come with that sort of idea, right? How do you do this? Can you do this programmatically? How do you assess the returns for the brand? Like, how do you create the creative? Like, there's a lot of questions, but ultimately, I think we're moving into a place where you're going to see those very immersive ad experiences, in the metaverse at some point. And then equally interesting, which might be even more interesting for your audience, is how do we leverage data for targeting purposes in the metaverse? So the metaverse is not fueled by third-party cookies, right? It's not fueled by IDFA and things of that nature. But I have this sort of like concept that at some point of time, maybe it will be possible for a marketer to partner with, let's say, a Decentraland again, who has a connection to your wallet and know what NFTs you've purchased over the last 30 days. And maybe Decentraland can help us determine whether Kevin is the right person to target or not in Decentraland at that point of time. Let's say we determine that Kevin has purchased a sports-related NFT, right? And Decentraland can scan your wallet and determine you have an interest in sports. Next thing we know, a brand may go into the metaverse and show you an ad for a sports item, right? So this idea of kind of blockchain targeting is very early. There's a lot of questions here around data. Can we process this data? Can we act on this data? Do we have regulatory concerns and things of that nature? But I think the idea of blockchain targeting is not such a distant one, I think, in my opinion.
Well, that would certainly be exciting because we are losing a lot of fidelity with regards to marketing within the open web with IDFA and the loss of third-party cooking. And of course, first-party cookies and other first-party PII-based marketing is still super powerful, whether it's email marketing, SMS push marketing, et cetera. But for those folks who spend a lot of time in one or more metaverses, whether they're games or not, those same audiences are particularly challenging to reach by marketers anywhere else, right? They don't watch television in the old way that you and I watched television when we were kids. And so you need to figure out how to reach them as a marketer if you're trying to make a brand impression when they're still a teen or in their 20s. So I agree with you. That's going to be fascinating to see how effectively, how those platforms evolve to allow for semi-targeted or marketing within audience clusters. So
well, let's hope that we can be on this podcast in 1 year from now and figure out what progress has been made in blockchain targeting. Is that even a possibility for marketers? Right, I have more questions than answers on that specific topic. So anyone in the audience is looking into this, expanding with it, has some ideas, like I want to hear from them.
Yeah, well, the one-way hashes and custom audiences are already super powerful. If those overflow into the metaverse, I think it'll be very interesting. I'm sure that there's an entire team at LiveRamp who's trying to work on this. I'll see if maybe I can get comment from folks like them as the year progresses. So thanks so much, Ben, for joining me and having this conversation about the evolution of the metaverse and the evolution of marketing.
Of course, you touched two of my passion points. Number one, marketing, and number two, NFTs. So really happy to be here, and thank you. Those were amazing questions. I hope that your audience will find the interview insightful.
Great, thanks again.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.